This does have the feel of an item of rolling stock that a lot of thought has gone into. It's not crude, not by any standard. Hi there to you, I hope I find you well. And today is something really special, and I know I always say that, but today it really is. We've been very lucky to be provided by Hornby one of the all-new six-wheel coaches from the range that they announced last week. And I'm really grateful to be given the opportunity to take a really good close look at this coach, because it's certainly one which I think has generated the most interest across the entirety of the 2021 range. So, in association with the channel sponsor Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories, come with me, and I'm really looking forward to showing you the ins and outs of the all-new 2021 Hornby range six-wheel coaches. When Hornby made their 2020 announcements, everybody thought that they just couldn't be topped, and that in 2021 we'd be seeing a consolidation period where they tried to get the last few of those centenary announcements out and maybe paid lip service to a few reissuings of older models with new liveries, new identities, but generally speaking just kind of kept it simple. But Hornby have gone for a completely different direction. Their 2021 announcements have included a whole host of new products over and above what they announced in the 2020 range. They have also chosen to expand on, for example, the Hornby 00 Premium range of models. But one of the ones that really did catch modelers' eyes was the range of 4 and 6 wheel pre-grouping coaches. These are items that have never particularly been offered, certainly not in high detail, to the market before. And what Hornby have probably quite wisely chosen to do is to get an essence of those pre-grouping coaches in these. They are provided as a generic basis for the liveries, and the reason for this was that a lot of railway companies, whilst they did build a lot of 4 and 6 wheel coaches during the pre-grouping period, they tended to be built pretty much as bespoke one-offs to fit the need of the time. There wasn't as much standardization back then as we've come used to now, so it would mean that if they made a model that was a specific example, it would probably be much less passable in a different railway company's livery. So what Hornby have set out to do is to really just get the look and feel of that pre-grouping period without focusing too extensively on a particular prototype. Although it has to be fair to say that these do have a very Stroudly influenced look to them. The model that Hornby have sent over is R40131, the Southern Railway 6-wheel first-class coach, number 7514, and this comes with lights. The whole range is being offered both with and without lights, and the lighting system can be bought as an aftermarket option from Hornby to retrofit coaches that didn't come from the factory with the lighting system, in case you change your mind or wish to expand your fleet further. This lighting system is actually quite clever. It doesn't rely on track power, so it's totally and utterly compatible with both DC and DCC running, and it's actuated using a reed switch and a magnet that comes supplied in the box with these, so there's no tiny little switches to get broken or wear and tear, and they run off a watch battery type installation inside the coach, which, given that these are LED based in the lighting, that little watch battery is probably good for around 200 hours of continuous running. So as you can imagine, turning them on for a short running session, maybe turning them off when the coach is sat in a siding, that 200 hours is actually going to extend out over quite a long length of time. And because you're activating that switch using a magnet, there isn't actually any real danger of things getting damaged in the process. I'm going to open up this box now and see just how good this model looks in the flesh. I'm going to take that out, and there's also some paperwork in the box as well, which I believe is going to become into its own when we look into doing not just the footboard fitting, which has got details there, but also some information about battery replacement when that comes due. And you can see there that these are quite simple to get into, so we'll take a look at that later on in the review. And of course the battery is a CR2032 battery. These are sold in pretty much most supermarkets quite readily, and they're the same type of batteries that a lot of PCs use as their motherboard CMOS battery. We've got those footboards here, and these are provided for the user to fit, but they do look quite robust out of quite a springy plastic, so I wouldn't be too worried about any damage caused to these with the odd knock. The coach itself comes in the clamshell packaging, and I'm going to take this out now. This is the magnet that is used to actuate the switch. And one of the things actually I've noticed with this is it's also a really good tool that perhaps Hornby should consider selling separately for finding any metal screws that when you're doing maintenance work either drop into your track somewhere and get lost, or indeed onto your carpet. And the carpet up here has historically eaten an awful lot of screws, so I'm going to be on my hands and knees with this, trying to find all of those screws that have been taken by the carpet gods over the years. The coach itself sports an awful lot of separately fitted detail. The price of these is coming out at, well, discounted, I've seen them down to around the £27 mark. And the pricing point for them is around £30 without lights, or £35, £36 with lights. And that lighting system can be purchased separately to retrofit coaches should you so choose. What has immediately struck me is that these door handles down the side there are separately applied detail fittings, and you can see that does work really, really well. This does have the feel of an item of rolling stock that a lot of thought has gone into. It's not crude, not by any standard. You can see flush glazing, we've got the raised panelling as per the prototypes. This was a very prominent feature of pre-grouping coaches, and it really does bring out that subtle lining. And actually, I'm really looking forward to some of the other more complex liveries. I've got a full set of London and North Western Railway coaches on order, just to see how exquisite that lining brings the detail out on them. We've got the correct representation of the wooden drop lights there in the doors. These would slide down into the door and be raised up by a strap that would be pulled from the inside, which would force the window back all the way up. It was quite a simple affair, but it did work, and actually that kind of drop light was still being fitted in coaches probably 50 years after this prototype was built. The ends of the coaches, well, they don't have any corridor connections, nor would they ever need to. These coaches were completely self-contained. The actual lamp brackets, though, are moulded on there, and it's something which did surprise me a little bit, given that the door handles are separately fitted details. Looking to the rest of the ends, we've got metal separately fitted handrails, both on the roof, and if we turn this to the side, just about possible to see there that that is also a separately fitted metal handrail, although black on black doesn't tend to come up very well on the camera. Looking in the windows, I can also see that we've got the lozenges there for, I'm guessing, but I'm going to have to get quite close there. We've got 3 lots of smoking compartments, denoted there by the red symbol, and then 1 no smoking at the end there. How times have changed. Well, now it would be completely non-smoking, but back then I guess so many people smoked that the non-smokers were very much in a minority. On the roof we've got these fabulous torpedo vents. Of course, this is a much later coach, so these coaches did get modified over their lifespan. And those torpedo vents do look good, and you can see in this light, even though they're off-white on off-white, they do catch the light pretty well. And the level of detail is actually really, really nicely done. We've also got these rain guttering strips as well to protect all the doors down the side from water just cascading down the side when it rained. The underframe itself there is nicely done with the rivet detail. It's subtle but effective, and it really does look the part. The W irons have got openings through air where it needs to be, and those springs do look really nicely realised. And we've also got the axle box covers too. They are a solid one-piece moulding, but they do capture a lot of that detail. The actual brake blocks are just slightly out of line with the wheel treads. It does allow a bit of lateral movement, and looking at that, they do appear to be in the perfect location if you wish to convert this coach to EM or P4. There is space to do that, but be aware that it will restrict slightly the curves that this can get round if you do so. Although, of course, if you're modelling P4 or EM, you're not really going to be going for those super tight curves, I'm guessing. The centre axle there slides much further. There are no brake blocks on the centre wheel. It's modelled as per a range of different prototypes, but Hornby have chosen to have the axle box remain on the sole bar and the wheel able to move that longer distance so that this can get round some quite tight curves. And we're going to be putting this around wear yard later on in the video just to see how well it copes with complex point work and also some really tight curves. The underframe detail is much more basic than we've seen from some of the other products that Hornby have released recently. We do have some box detail here, but they're solid with just only minor relief detail on one side, completely blank on the other. The actual framework does have a kind of representation under here, but it's very low relief and there's not much else going on. We do also have a dynamo that on the full-size prototypes would have been connected to the axle by a belt, and this would have allowed electric lighting by charging the batteries in the battery boxes when the coach was in motion, which would then allow in places like stations the lights to remain on for the duration of the vehicle being stationary. The couplings are contained within NEM pockets, which fit into a block which is quite visible from the side, it has to be said, even if you were taking these out. And I'm just looking in there, there doesn't appear to be a way to remove that mounting block if you wish to go down the route of 3-link type couplings. But it's certainly something that could be cut out, but it's not something that is perhaps quite as well placed as it could have been for hiding the coupling detail if you were looking to go down an alternative coupling route. On the ends of the coaches, the vacuum brake standard is there. It's moulded in plain black to match the body colour, as is the buffer beam detail. The buffers themselves are turned metal. They do have some quite thick heads and they're not sprung loaded, but they do seem to be quite robust, and they have a very, very peculiar, you can just see there, concave look to the face. I've not really seen that before. That is certainly a bit different. If we go back to the underside, you can see here as well this tab that is in place, and I can only conclude that this tab is to do with isolating the battery for when this is in transit. And I'm going to have a look at the instructions and see just what we need to do to get that lighting enacted later on in this video. The wheel faces for me on these coaches are exquisite. If you look there, you can see that Hornby have not gone for a generic wheel face. These are actually bespoke to this model, and they capture those block wooden centered wheels really, really well. The method of construction of these wheels on the full-size coaches had these hardwood blocks in a ring around the center, and then the metal tread around the outside. And the front face of these wheels really does capture that incredibly well. even down to the individual wooden blocks there marked out and the rivet detail on the rim, and also right down in there next to the centre. Activating of the lights is a relatively straightforward process. First things first, what we have to do is remove the tab that's been put in there just to stop the lights from somehow getting activated in transit and running that battery down. So it suggests take hold of this firmly and just pull. Just trying to pull that out, and out it will come. It is firmly in there, but not too firmly, so we can get into that no problem. And now what we should find is that the supplied magnet will turn those lights on and off. And what I'm actually going to do is just turn this light off. And you can see there we are on as soon as I've released that tab. And I'm just going to, there. And that's in the off and the on position. If you just wave the battery, that does seem to work. So you don't have to actually rub the roof of the coach with the battery, but you are going to need to make sure that you hold that there close enough for the reed switch to latch. And that is actually quite a decent lighting that we're getting from that. You can see in there that we've got 5 LED lights inside the coach, and it just takes a little bit of practice. Come on, a little bit of practice just to get that to turn on and off correctly. Getting inside the coach, it recommends you just get a nail or something between the actual coach body and the chassis. Really just a bit gentle here. My nails aren't really long enough at the moment for doing this, so I'm just going to try and get that in. I don't want to break anything. And just lever them apart. Actually, it's easier than I thought. And it just clips in place. We've got these 6 clips in there. And there's a metal weight along the centre of the coach, providing actually a surprisingly good amount of low down weight onto this chassis. The rest of the actual coach body, you can see there that the CR2032 battery and the mechanism are actually quite neatly placed into the underside of the seats. We can just lever that out, and the battery itself is quite an easy, it's a tight fit, but it's an easy one to take out and put back in at the time it needs to be replaced, and then that just tucks back down inside the base of the coach quite readily. Let's just line that up like that, and you can see whenever you put a new battery in, it seems to automatically latch the lights on. There we are. One thing I would say though is that you're going to have to lever out the seats if you want to put passengers in these, and this is perfectly possible, but just want to be a little bit careful. You can just slide out the seats. This whole inside mechanism just comes out, but be very careful. You can see there that the lighting strip is fixed to the coach roof, and you just want to make sure that you don't strain those 2 wires. And on the inside, we've got full access to the seats inside the coach if you want to fit some sat passengers. One thing I would say though is that the battery and the mechanism for the lighting assembly does mean that one of these compartments effectively has no floor, so you may have to do some surgery to any passengers that you want to fit into that area. There's no luggage rails or anything like that in here, but it is a really nice package, it has to be said. So we're just going to very carefully slide all this back together. There's no screws involved, it just clicks in. Just make sure, there we are, yeah, the lights are all working just fine. And then we'll just very carefully line up the coach with the body, and it's a push, clip, fit, and then that is nicely on there. So next up, I want to fit the running boards. These do seem to be a fairly simple push fit. They are symmetrical, it seems, and there is some information contained in the paperwork that comes with the coach. So effectively all we need to look at doing is lining these up with the holes underneath, and they just interference fit, push fit into those holes, and they go in quite snugly. They don't feel like they're in need of glue. They don't feel like they're at danger of falling out. They've got a very pleasing, positive fit to them. And you can see there, if I can do that whilst I'm trying to film it, then that's pretty easy to do. And you can see there, that does really actually improve the look of these coaches. What you found was a lot of these came with these footboards because they were used going into little holts that didn't necessarily have full height platforms. The tempo printing on these is really quite sharp actually. I'm just looking there at the lettering for the first on the side of the coach, and the number and the Southern Railway, really nicely done. And again, the carriage number replicated up there as well. It's quite a simple livery for the Southern Railway green, but it is effectively realised nonetheless. And I really am looking forward to some of the more complex liveries, such as that on the Great Western Railway liveried coaches, the London and North Western Railway, and the London and South Western Railway. And the teak wood grain finish, which is visible on the examples from the Great Northern Railway and the London and North Eastern Railway offerings from Hornby, looks to be as good as what we've come to expect on the Gresley range of coaches, which certainly from when I've done reviews on them really are quite special. Just looking to the other end of the coach there, and you can see too, whilst again we've got the metal fitted handrails, the lamp irons and those steps, they're not separately fitted detailed, it's one single moulding for the end of the carriage. So it is an area where it does feel that it does keep the cost down, but there is room there perhaps that they could have fitted separate steps, but I guess that would have pushed the cost up. In terms of locomotives that would have pulled these, well, so much variety exists. And I suppose the biggest area is going to be the Terrier. It's come out in a number of different liveries, spanning the whole of its lifespan from the early improved engine green right through to the BR liveries of the last surviving examples on British railways. And they would have run with all of these. And actually, I have been talking to one of the local model shops, Tim over at Arcadia Models in Shore, and he tells me that the liveries that he's had the most orders come in for is the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway that would suit the Terrier perfectly, but also these Southern Railway green. So I have to say that if either of these are liveries which are on your must-have list, then you probably want to get a pre-order in somewhere for those. And we've got an affiliate link in the description box down below that takes you to Hatton's to be able to find where you can pre-order these coaches. But it's not just those. You could imagine hot picker specials behind locomotives such as the Hornby 700 class. And these have been brought out in both the BR liveries but also the Southern Railway livery to really suit this coach very, very well. Remembering that in the range we've got North British Railway Crimson, well, Hornby also have the J36, which whilst this was a preservation era livery, it's certainly one which would really look the part when pulling a rake of these 4 and 6 wheelers. Other locomotives from the Hornby fleet, well, the H-class, and certainly in BR and Southern livery, that would be another good match for these 4 and 6 wheelers. Although one thing which has surprised me is that in this initial batch, we have not seen South Eastern and Chatham Railway liveried versions, given that Hornby have produced a number of locomotives in suitable livery over the years, and they would look amazing in tow behind locomotives such as the H-class and the Terrier. Kent and East Sussex Railway, well, there was a lot of hop picker specials that were ran on that line, both pre and post national ownership, and Hornby has produced the Terrier in the Kent and East Sussex Railway livery, but also later suitable BR liveries, and that would certainly look the part as a hop picker special. We mustn't forget too the M7. This is a locomotive that has been put out on a number of occasions by Hornby in the very, very eye-catching versions of the London and South Western Railway livery, and this would be an absolutely perfect accompaniment to the London and South Western Railway versions that Hornby have announced. I'm going to put this coach on the layout now, and I'm going to see just how well it performs over a variety of complex point work, as well as some tight corners and gradients, so we can get a sense of just how well it goes around the track. In terms of running ability, the coach actually ran incredibly well, and I'm always very skeptical of 6-wheel chassis such as these because of the difficulties imposed by that centre wheel set. But these managed to get round actually less than radius 1 with complete ease, with no hint of derailment or flange climbing at all. It went through point work with no great issue whatsoever, both facing and trailing points, and it also coped with not just gradients of up to 5%, but it also coped with the transitions between the gradients and the flat. It coped with gradients on a curve. It coped with twisted track. In fact, everything that I could possibly throw at this coach, it managed with the greatest of ease. And with that flicker-free battery installation for the lighting, there was not a hint of any poor contacts going over any part of the track. So we get that lovely constant on look of the lighting, which actually does add a huge amount to this model. I tried it as well with a tail load. I put the Hornby Pullman observation car behind it, and what's interesting actually was that you could see the flickering on the Pullman observation car as it went over slightly dirty track and had trouble with its pickups, that there was no hint of with this battery operated lighting on this. It remains to be seen how long that battery will last for in normal usage. They say about 200 hours, and actually it has to be said that I have CR2032 batteries on the CMOS motherboards for a variety of computers that have very rarely, if at all, needed changing over a period of a decade of constant usage. So actually I have every faith that they have chosen the correct battery for this job, and it's going to give a lot of trouble-free operation. Coming to the scores, for me the build quality was pretty good. I particularly like those separately applied door handles on the side. Now, I'm not averse to moulded detail when it's done right, but actually on this, what really struck me was how nicely that brought the detail to the fore. The glazing is nicely done, flush fitted, and it's a particularly nice touch as well that that wooden surround of the drop lights is done so well. The interior is a little bit basic, but then again, how much can you actually see through those windows? There's merely a suggestion of the interior rather than the detail of it, and I think with a few choice passengers placed by the windows in these, really there's no point in getting obsessed by what's on the inside. All in all, the build quality was pretty good. There weren't any flaws with this review model, and even things that were left for the user to fit, such as these step boards, went on pretty straightforwardly and have stayed put throughout the review. There was no issues with the wheel sets, no issues with any other bits of detail coming loose, and even though the body is clipped to the chassis, there's not a hint of a poor fit on this, and it stayed put when it needed to. So for build quality, I'm going to give this a 9.9 out of 10. Next up on running qualities, and this is where this model scored incredibly highly. Everything that I threw at it, it coped without any issue whatsoever. I never got a derailment out of it, and believe me, some of the track that it runs on my test area of Weir Yard is deliberately laid quite badly. The reason for this is that if anything is going to show up shortcomings in locomotives and rolling stock, then really tight curves, gradients, gradient changes, point work that's not necessarily so sympathetically laid really does highlight any potential problems. But this coach got through them all without even breaking a sweat, so it gets the full 10 out of 10. When it comes to DCC fitting and innovation, DCC fitting isn't really relevant, but innovation certainly is. And I really actually found myself warming so quickly to that battery operated lighting system. Too often when you have little toggle switches on the underside of items, they can be small and fiddly. And the other problem that they introduce is that you have to actually remove the vehicle from the track to be able to set them. Not so with this. Even with it on the track, using the supplied magnet, we can just turn them on and off with the greatest of ease. And I actually really like that. The choice of the CR2032 battery is a good one. They are strong, reliable and long-lasting batteries. And actually when we got inside this coach, it's not difficult to take it apart to change that battery should it need doing. And the batteries themselves are readily available. So I'm going to give this a 9.0 for innovation. On accuracy and quality of finish, this is an area where there were a couple of bits that really had me a little bit puzzled. The ends of these coaches just feel a little bit cheapened for me. Those concave buffers stick out somewhat. I'm not really quite sure what's going on with those, but they do look a bit peculiar to my eyes. It's not a major fault, but I'm going to bring that to your attention anyway. Another area with these moulded ends, with these moulded on lamp iron details. I just felt that perhaps this is a little bit of a step in the wrong direction. When you look at the quality of the rest of this coach, for me these coach ends just felt a little bit of a backward step. We do have some other nicely separately applied metal handrails and they look good. The torpedo vents on the roof, they also do stand out as something particularly nice. The underframe detail is a little bit more Spartan, but as I say over and over again, if you're not going to be able to see it, then why add it in a manner that adds to the cost of the model? I don't think it adds anything. A highlight for me are these correct faces on the wheels. They really do look nice. And when it's on the track and running, they do look good going round and are noticeable for being the correct profile wheels. The actual paint finish on this model is nicely applied. It's sharp, it's true. All of that lining there on the beading is exactly where it's supposed to be. And the lettering is not smudged, it's just perfectly applied. So I'm going to give this a 7.1 out of 10. On value for money, these come very much into the same sort of ballpark that we've seen from some of the other Mark I type coaches from Hornby. I found these around, well, their RRP is £30 without lights and around the £35–36 mark for with lights. But discounted, I've seen retailers offering them down to the £25–26 mark, which is actually a really good price for a coach. Being shorter wheelbase such as these, I think they're going to really appeal for space-starved modelers. They are a huge gap in the ready-to-run market that has been thoroughly filled with these. What I will address is the elephant in the room, perhaps. I know another manufacturer is offering a range of pre-grouping styled coaches, and a lot of people have speculated about these being a direct competition to those, but I disagree with that. I've noted from the offerings that have been announced from both manufacturers that rather than competing directly, they actually complement. Bear in mind that there was a huge variety in pre-grouping coaching stock, and given that these are generic and the other manufacturer's range is also a generic representation, they provide enough subtle differences that I think that they are going to go and complement each other quite well and go to make up some quite lengthy rakes of accurate looking pre-grouping coaches, and I think that this market is more than big enough to accommodate both. So when it comes to value for money, I'm going to give these a 9 out of 10. That gives a final score of a very respectable 45 out of 50. What I really think about this model is that it is a good choice to bring to the range. It complements so many of the locomotives that they have announced, and I'm pretty sure that this might be a little clue as to what might get announced in the 2022 range. I'm really looking forward to the more ornate liveries such as the London and North Western Railway and the London and South Western Railway ones in particular, and I think that this is going to be the product that just keeps on giving. Hornby could have rested on their laurels after the stellar 2020 range announcements, but they've gone further and given the market something that it has been asking for quite some time. No longer do manufacturers tell the enthusiasts when they ask for pre-grouping rolling stock that, oh, we keep on telling people there's no demand for that. Well, there is demand for that, and I think Hornby are going to find that the demand for these is huge. Speaking to a local retailer, they've already said that the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway versions and the Southern Railway versions are proving particularly popular. But I think that given the number of pretty pre-grouping liveried locomotives that we've seen from all manufacturers, these are going to find an extensive home in a lot of modelers' layouts. For me, this could well be the standout announcement from the Hornby 2021 range. Well, I hope you really enjoyed that video and found it informative too. And don't forget to consider subscribing to the channel. You'll be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. And tickle that like button and share it on social media, because sharing is caring. And of course, just a quick reminder that we've got the affiliate link in the description box down below that takes you over to Hatton's Model Railways to pre-order the full range of the Hornby 4 and 6 wheel coaches in a variety of different liveries, and of course with and without that lighting system. Now, one thing I would say to you is that some of these liveries are pretty much guaranteed to sell out very, very quickly. So it's a case that if there's any of these that you do see that you want from the 2021 range, it's probably a really good idea to get your pre-orders in now. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself. It's been a pleasure to have your company, and I look forward to seeing you again. Take care, happy modelling, bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Tepic, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky107107, George Botterini, Andy Finch, Chris Moss, Robert Sears, MD of San Juan Model Company and Grant Line Products, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, and Mo Henry. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.